Going to open the meeting of the Walker Planning Commission for May 19, 2021. First item on the agenda is to review the meeting minutes from the May 5th meeting. Any comments, corrections? Motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Tyler, supported by Joe to approve the minutes of May 5th. Is there anyone that's in opposition of approving those minutes? No opposition, they stand approved. Next item is general public comment. This is an opportunity to allow for expression of questions, concerns regarding non-public hearing items and issues not on the agenda. As you see, there's two items on the agenda this evening, a site plan review at 488 Kinney and a public hearing for a property at 3174 4 Mile. Anybody either here or online that would want to offer comment on a non-agenda item? Please come forward and give us your name and address, please.
Turn the microphone on. Hit the big button.
There you go.
Okay, now you can hear me?
Very good.
Okay. My name is Mary Ann Morrissey and I live at 332 Rolling Green Drive, Northwest. And actually, I'm here because I got this card in the mail. I thought there was going to be an agenda item about a rezoning request for 3791 Lake Michigan Drive, but it's not on the agenda, so I'm not sure if I should just bring up concerns now or.
So that item has been postponed to a different agenda.
Oh.
So
Okay,
yeah, we're not 100% certain if it'll be back on the agenda, but we weren't able to put it on this agenda after sending out the cards.
okay. Has it already been voted on?
No,
Okay.
the planning commission hasn't seen it at all yet. We were working with a developer who she had a lot of questions about our requirements.
Okay,
And her plans didn't contain a lot of the stuff that we needed. So we're still working with her, I believe, to
Okay.
get some revised plans.
okay. So what's the best way for me to, I have some concerns. I live right across the street. We already have multiple apartments around here. It's already congested. I'm not a fan.
Yeah. So if it does come back on our planning commission agenda, then you'll get another card in the mail.
Okay, and if it doesn't,
If it doesn't, then that means that it's
it's not going through.
right.
Oh, okay.
You'll definitely be notified because it's a
Okay.
rezone request.
Okay, so we will have input if it's gonna go forward at all.
Yes.
Okay, all
Yep.
right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move to the first case review. Case number 21012, site plan review 488 Kinney Northwest. And Tricia, if you could, as the planning director, could you introduce that, please?
Northwest. 488 Kinney Avenue Northwest. We have DeVries and Royston Insurance, and they are proposing an accessory building, and my presentation is not on the screen. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. All right, let's try this again. There we go. Okay, so the request and property overview. So this is a site plan review, and the planning commission is being asked tonight to review the site plan for a 1,200 square foot accessory building and to provide an approval with or without conditions, denial, or tabling of the request. Again, the property address is 488 Kinney Avenue Northwest. The lot size is 0.9 acres. And the zoning district is ORP, which is office, research, and parking. Future land use designation is mixed use. It's with the Standale neighborhood cluster. And it has a community character designation of neighborhood node. The general location of the site is just north of the Kinney Avenue, Lake Michigan Drive intersection on the east side of Kinney Avenue. And we have Randy Feenstra of Feenstra and Associates and Brad DeVries, the property owner and business owner of DeVries and Royston Insurance, with us tonight. Just a quick overview of what's being proposed here. It's a 1,200 square foot accessory building. This is the location where it's being proposed. And this is elevation rendering of the proposed accessory building. So the first thing that I want to focus on with this particular request is land use. So again, the property is zoned office, research, and parking. And so in that zoning district, along with most other zoning districts, accessory uses are permitted by right when they are clearly incidental to the principal use, and they must be in connection with the principal use. So the use of the accessory building must somehow be tied to the use of the business within the principal building. So we have some limitations that we want to place on this proposed building. And we would like to make it known that no personal use can be permitted in association with this accessory building. And it shall be used only in connection with the office use and business within the principal building. You all should have received a narrative from Mr. DeVries, who went into some detail on how the building would be used. And it sounds like he plans to use it for storage of some files. He plans to rent out the upper portion of the existing building where their files are currently located. And once that tenant takes over, then they're gonna not have as much file storage space. So that's one of the reasons why they would like to construct this building. Another reason that Mr. DeVries mentioned to me was that the future tenant could have some storage needs as well in the upper floor. And I couldn't remember if you said you had a proposed tenant, but okay. So he'll probably elaborate a little bit more on the uses when it's his turn to take the podium. So this is a pretty straightforward, simple site plan review. It's just a 1,200 square foot building, but this is usually the opportunity for the city to take advantage of these requests when people are asking for site plan approval. This is usually the time where we take a look at what's existing on the site and what could be improved, and what needs to be added, what needs to be brought up to the current codes. And so what we have to look at here is the proportionality of the improvements. Is it reasonable to ask for the planning commission to review the site plan for an accessory building and then also require upgrades and improvements that are not currently on the site based on the impact that the development is going to have on the surrounding community? So when requiring additional improvements as conditions of site plan approval, it's important to take rough proportionality into account. So essentially, you're asking the question as to whether the proposed improvements are reasonably related and roughly proportionate to the impact of the development on the community. So a couple of types of improvements that we would typically see with site plan approval would be things like landscaping, sidewalks, and stormwater management. In this particular case, we looked at each of these items, and could we ask for all the required front yard landscaping that we normally would as part of a regular site plan approval? But again, you want to look at whether or not it's proportional to the impact the development has on the community. So one thing that I can say about landscaping is that there's on the east side of the site, there's a considerable amount of existing vegetation that buffers this office site from the multifamily Hampton Lakes apartments on the other side of this parcel to the east. So we're not worried about buffering and screening there because there's already a considerable amount of existing vegetation. On the north property line, though, where it borders a single family home, there's some vegetation that's existing. There's a dead tree here that Mr. DeVries is planning on removing. And there's a lot of just kind of overgrown viney type scrub brush here. And then you can kind of see it, but there's a 4-foot high chain link fence here. And so a lot of the vegetation is kind of hanging over the fence or growing on the fence. And this looks pretty sufficient here, but there's a little bit of a gap here when it comes to screening from where this building is going to be. So what we are recommending is that just a few evergreen trees or arborvitae type trees be planted here. And we're only asking for 3 to 4. And so what I'm recommending is that the Planning Commission allow the applicant to work with staff to submit an acceptable landscaping plan prior to the issuance of a building permit. And so another one of those improvements that we would look at, like, hey, there's no sidewalks in front of this lot. Should we be requiring sidewalks? And so we want to take a look at what the ordinance requires. And this is what it says. They should be provided along the street unless determined by the Planning Commission to be undesirable or unnecessary. And I don't know that they're necessarily undesirable here. It's just that they may not be necessary. So let me give you a little more information here. The site driveway configuration from back in the day when this site was originally constructed in 1980. This picture right here is the driveway configuration. It's like a horseshoe shaped driveway with 2 entrances. I'm not sure if it ever got constructed like this. So it was, my guess is that this either never got constructed like this, or maybe it was back in 1980. And then at some point they decided to get rid of this entrance, and then along went that sidewalk. So it sounds like if this never got constructed like this, then, this is the existing sidewalk that's there right now. And the rest of the site does not contain sidewalk going further north. So there are sidewalks on the other side of Kinney. So when we talk about whether or not sidewalks are necessary, if you look at this map here, you see some existing sidewalks on the west side of Kinney. And then right where those end on the other side of Kinney, on the east side, that's where sidewalk begins. So the Planning Commission has the authority to waive this requirement if they find that the sidewalks on the rest of the site are not necessary, especially when we look at rough proportionality. And then lastly, there's stormwater management. And there's a couple of items that Scott's going to go into further detail on. But there's a couple of things that I think would be, this would be a good opportunity for the site to come into compliance with a couple of Scott's engineering recommendations. So I'm going to let him talk about that. And so it's my recommendation that the Planning Commission grant site plan approval for the 1,200 square foot accessory building for DeVries and Royston Insurance located at 488 Kinney Avenue Northwest, subject to the following conditions. So the applicant shall address the items noted in the city engineer's report dated 5/11. And I think the biggest one here is that the building shall only be used in connection with the principal use on the site, which is office or whatever use is occupying the principal building, and shall not be used for personal storage. The applicant shall work with the CDD staff to submit an acceptable landscape plan that includes plantings for screening on the northern property line, and the plan shall be reviewed and approved by CDD staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. And then finally, the applicant shall submit revised construction drawings for the proposed accessory building that comply with the 2015 Michigan Building Code. And that includes being signed and sealed by a design professional such as an architect or an engineer.
Thank you, Tricia. Any comments or questions?
Is this part of the downtown district?
This is not part of the downtown district.
Okay, I didn't know how far down Kinney it went into Kinney versus.
Yeah,
straight
this is
down.
just outside of that area.
Okay.
It's actually, it's kind of like just a standalone ORP parcel. So to the north, there is R1. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, A. And then on the other side of Kinney, though, that's all Standale Downtown District. But then the parcels south of this one are C3. Mhm.
All right. Jason, you have any questions as well?
I'm all set, if you're referring to me.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, invite city engineer Scott Connors to give his overview on the project.
Just a handful of engineering related comments. The plan that we reviewed for this, I believe was the same plan from site plan review. So it gets a little redundant if you were familiar with the site plan review comments. First off is the sidewalk. We do have a pretty strong opinion about the sidewalk being finished. You know, it's required by our highway rules and regulations for improved lots. And, you know, we were talking during the DDA meeting earlier today about the importance of pedestrian connectivity in the DDA and, you know, how can we help promote that? And we've also been talking about Kinney in this section, you know, really needing to be on our capital improvement plan for improvement. All those things leads towards, we really need to get these pieces of sidewalk in if we can by the developers. Otherwise, it really weighs down the cost of the public projects and everybody else has to pay for the sidewalk for those folks that are developing their property, which is a little bit hard to swallow for some folks. So we recommend that remain as a condition. Relative to stormwater, I think we can provide a little bit of flexibility here. Usually if a plan's coming into the planning commission, it means they have to come into full compliance. We do have a staff policy though that helps out a little bit. If it's more of a staff review, and basically it says, if you get us the stormwater maintenance agreement, provide us an as-built of your site, which is basically a plan that shows where everything is and the elevations, that we can work around that. The other caveat there is that they maintain the stuff they've got. So in this case, they have leaching basins, which is a low impact development technique. They don't last forever. So if this was built in 1980 or any time 10 years ago or more, they're probably not working. So the idea would be to get those inspected and maintained. And I think we can then waive the rest of the requirements that would come with stormwater compliance. So that's a pretty easy solution. We'd also ask for additional contours and elevations around the northeast portion of the site to make sure that we're not backing up any drainage on the residential properties that are around that corner. I think since then, the plan has changed a little bit because it looks like it's the building has moved. But again, we're writing this off of the plan that we had in front of us for review. And then again, with that other plan, the rear drive aisle had been reduced significantly. It was pretty narrow. Some of the parking spots weren't very practical anymore. Again, that all changes with what we're seeing in front of us right now, which will provide a little bit more clarity. But I can, just from looking at this, I can see that the drive aisles, again, going to be pretty narrow. They probably should lose 2 spots in that middle parking bay, and make some changes to the site plan to make it kind of compliant with our rules for today. So that would cover engineering.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions, comments for Scott? All right. Let's see, this is, at this point, we invite the applicant to come forward and give us your name and address and any comments you'd like to offer.
My name's Brad DeVries and I own DeVries and Royston Insurance Agency. The address, you want my home address or this address? Home address is 2715 Elmwood, Southeast Grand Rapids. Thanks for hearing me today. If you guys have specific questions with regards to the parking, which I agree, actually, I would kind of like to reduce the size of the parking lot because we have a significant amount of parking there, but I was planning on getting rid of those in the center, 2 of those in the center so that they would be more space. We have a more than adequate parking at that facility. And so that's kind of what brought it up originally. But I was hoping for some green space in the back. Of course, I have to pay to pave the parking lot, which I've already done. But it's not done because I'm awaiting this approval for this particular project. With regards to the sidewalks, I completely agree that sidewalks are a wonderful thing. I live in a community that's has sidewalks, but they go somewhere. They go to another sidewalk. The sidewalk in front of my building is not going to go anywhere. It's not going to go to another sidewalk. And there are no sidewalks from my building all the way north. All the sidewalks are on the other side of the street. So it doesn't seem to me to make a lot of sense for me to build a sidewalk to nowhere because I have sidewalks all the way around my building. There's sidewalks to my building. If you cross the street, you can take the sidewalk all the way north. There's drainage issues. We have a drainage there. There's also utilities underneath the in the easement there, which would make the sidewalk have to fish around those. I mean, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, but again, I'm a big fan of sidewalks, but here no one would use. There's also a the print doesn't show, but there's a very large, beautiful tree on that corner. And I basically would be, cutting into the root system of that tree, which, puts neighboring properties at risk. So just beyond the sign there on the left is where the big tree is. So it kind of, I'm the last building in that commercial area, and then it's residential going forward, and all the sidewalks are on the other side. So I don't really want to do the sidewalk because I don't see the logic in that. But do you have any other questions?
Hey, Commissioner.
Tricia, didn't you say the sidewalk on the other side of the street on the west side ended in front of his, so that does end there. So it needs to continue to go somewhere, doesn't it?
So the sidewalk on Kinney on the west side of Kinney ends, and then directly across the street there, from there, on the east side, that's where it begins and goes further south.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. To Lake Michigan Drive.
The sidewalk doesn't go all the way down to Lake Michigan
It
Drive.
goes all the way
That
down.
goes all the way
to
down.
Drive.
Yep.
Oh,
On
it
the other
does.
side.
Yeah, on the
Okay,
west side.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it goes in front of the car
Okay,
wash.
it
and
does
Yeah.
go.
the oil
Okay, I'm
change.
sorry.
I think when he says sidewalk to nowhere, he's talking about the sidewalk going north.
Yeah, from my driveway going north, it kind of runs into a tree and a drainage ditch. And there are no sidewalks all the way up north until you get, I mean, there are no sidewalks on that side of the street. So if someone wanted to use the sidewalk, there's not a lot of foot traffic, but they're walking on the other side of the street. And they're walking into the downtown, Standale area. There's a bus stop there and I see people using that sidewalk frequently, but no one would walk on the sidewalk in front of my building because it doesn't go anywhere. You're just walking into somebody else's yard at that point. And there's drainage there. I'm not even sure you could build a sidewalk there without messing up the drainage. But I mean, that's Randy's department.
All right. No other questions? We'll proceed. It's not a public hearing, but it sounds like there's someone on the line. I don't know if they have any interest in questions about this project.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Pardon?
Yeah, this is Jason.
Yes, Jason.
I had two questions. In the letter that Mr. DeVries had sent to us earlier, he had noted that there's a utility trailer that they use for various events and advertising. The question would be, does that need to be stored inside this facility, or would that be an outdoor use? And then my second question was just going to be, was there any gutters and downspouts proposed on that north side, or was Scott comfortable with the buffer there that we wouldn't have too much water coming off the roof?
Yes, me.
Yeah, the first question, Mr. DeVries, the trailer that you described in your narrative, is that something that's going to be stored inside the building or stored outside the building?
Well, that's the whole reason I don't want to store it outside. I want to store it
Okay.
in the building because, I want to preserve the, integrity of that and sun fade and all that sort of thing. With regards to the drainage issue, I think that's an absolute legitimate request. I think putting gutters on the back side of the building and having the building drain on my side of the fence, so to speak, makes a lot of sense. Because, you're going to have a roof there and that's going to fall in that, in that weedy area. Okay. And it could go onto the neighbor's property and I wouldn't want that. I don't want there to be a puddle there. So, I would put a gutter on the backside there and then have it drain out to those drains that are in my parking lot. The parking lot actually drains extremely well. So I think I would do that probably even if not required, because I think it's just being a good neighbor.
All right, very good. Thank you.
What type of, are you looking to store there? I guess I heard trailer, but is there paper files that you're looking to store there?
Yeah, we're required to maintain files and for, many years. I think it's, 7 years at least, but we have a lot of that. So here's the long story. I bought the building and we occupied the first floor. I had always planned to rent out the upper floor, but we're kind of using that for some storage. And I have a realtor that's like, hey, you should rent that out. And I'm like, yes, I'd like to. But I don't have any place to put anything else because we're using all the office space on the first floor. So he said, you could build a garage back there and use some of that, that space to store those items if you get a tenant. But right now, the other thing is I'd like to expand my business a little bit. and pretty much take all the files that are not being moved, used in our back room. We have a file room, and it's a very large room. And I could take those out and put those in there if need be, because I need some more office space. But I don't want to take the upstairs because that's, I could hold that out for rent. And it just seems silly to take one office upstairs, and when there's 10 of them.
Do you consider your current operations paperless?
We maintain actually both. We have paperless, and then we also still maintain a paper file. We think that's prudent, given the fact that most of the time people call us during a natural disaster or tornado or power outage. And if you don't have any indication of what coverages they have, it makes people a little unsettled. So we still maintain a paper file for every client, just so we can do that. And a lot of people would say that's archaic, but I actually think it's great because we've had windstorms come through and people want answers. They want to know how much coverage they have. They want to, and we can just pull a file and say, okay.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Any comments about the project? We've questions been raised about the sidewalk. A note was made about the maybe removing at least a couple, and the applicant has agreed to remove parking in the middle of that parking lot, which I agree as well, that skinning it down to a 15-foot aisleway would have been really, really tight. So we've got two different recommendations from staff with regard to the sidewalk extension along the front. I think good points are raised by both, but Scott, in terms of improvements along Kinney in the future, do you foresee that perhaps a storm sewer would be along that roadway and a flatter grade and more viable for sidewalk construction?
Yeah, and when that road gets widened, all those things will happen. I think what we've tried to do since the city became a city is to get that stuff built by developer as we go along, so that if the city wants to go in and fill in a gap, and for example, the gap here would be up to the apartments on the east side of the road, because there's a lot of people in those apartments. And as we talked about in the DDA, we want to get them walking to the downtown development district. So, the smaller those gaps become, the more feasible they are for the city to step in and help out. It's absolutely a viable thing that would be connected at some point. It's a lot like the 3 Mile Road. We have a patchwork of sidewalks out there, and so the term sidewalk to nowhere has been patented already. We've heard it a lot, but it over time it turns into a network. It's just taken a lot of vision.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna, I guess, echo that comment, because at the city commission level, we have, it comes up regularly, the need for improvements to Kinney. And I think one of the things that we envision when that time does come is to have more of those sidewalks, because there's so much residential development on both sides, and having that access to safe pedestrian travel is a priority at some point when we're able to do so. So I guess that would be my 2 cents on the sidewalk piece.
Okay, thank you.
I'm in favor of the sidewalk as well. If you look on the other side of the street, looks like they wiggled it around there. I think somehow they can work it up to there if it doesn't get built now. I mean, I think Scott's made some good arguments to have it with this project.
And Tom, too, that we provide a whole ton of flexibility on location and elevation, and because we don't have it shown on the plan, there's not much flexibility yet. But if Randy draws that up, we're going to work with him to try to avoid utilities and trees. And
You can see it across the
Yeah.
street in the aerial or the photo that's up. So I'm in favor of the sidewalk.
I would, if we're gonna be consistent in the way we've enforced this, I would require the sidewalk. We've been pretty stringent on it, so.
All right.
I have a question for Tricia. Your condition of no personal use, how do you enforce that?
That's a good question. We're not necessarily going to be driving by and looking in the windows and, inspecting the property. But, our enforcement specialist works off complaints. And so if she gets a complaint, regarding any type of activity that's going on inside that building that's not consistent with what's approved, then she would address that and she would reach out to the property owner to let him know that it's a violation of site plan approval and it's a violation of our ordinance in terms of land use. But good question. We're basically going on his word. That's why I indicated in my report that it's somewhat questionable when it comes to is an accessory building such as the one that's being proposed here customarily incidental to an office use. But with some of the things that he mentioned, like his trailer that he uses for promotional events, to me, that seems like a legitimate business use.
All right. If there's no other discussion, is anyone offering a motion?
Mr. Chair, I can offer a motion. Case number 21-012, motion for accessory buildings for DeVries and Royston Insurance. I make a motion to approve the site plan with the last revision date of 5/12/2021 for the 1,200 square foot accessory building for DeVries and Royston Insurance located at 488 Kinney Avenue Northwest, subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall address items noted in the city engineer's report dated 5/11/21. The building shall only be used in connection with the principal use of the site office and shall not be used for personal storage. Number 3, the applicant shall work with CDD staff to submit an acceptable landscape plan that includes plantings for screenings on the northern property line. The plan shall be reviewed and approved by CDD staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. Number 4, the applicant shall submit revised construction drawings for the proposed accessory building that comply with the 2015 Michigan Building Code, which includes being signed and sealed by a design professional such as an architect or civil engineer. Number 5, prior to the issuance of the building permit, the applicant shall provide the CDD staff with a PDF and 3 sets of hard copy plans with an updated last revision date with it that incorporated above note conditions of approval. And I would add number 6, that the applicant will install gutters on the rear of the building to direct the water away from the property line.
Support.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. Did you want to verbalize in your motion, Tyler, about the sidewalks?
It's in Scott's letter as a recommendation, so I figured I didn't delete it. I can verbalize it, yes. that,
Yeah, just verbalize it for the record.
We would also include in the motion that sidewalks be installed to finish the front property line.
Okay, that's still supported by the,
Yes.
okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor to conditionally approve the project as submitted with the notations of the 5 items in the draft motion, as well as the 2 additional items, the gutters and the sidewalk. Tricia, if you could go through a roll call vote, please.
Terry,
Yes.
Mark, Steve,
Yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jason.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Work with staff to respond to the conditions, and I look forward to your success at that location again.
I have a question. So with regard to the sidewalk, and he mentioned that the street's gonna be widened and so on. If I have to put those sidewalks in because the street's gonna be widened, do I have to do it immediately? Because how do I know that my sidewalk's gonna line up with where? What I don't wanna do is spend $8,000 on sidewalks and have you guys come through and widen the street and then tear them all out. It just doesn't seem to be good. I'd rather have you say, hey, when we widen the street, I'll put in the sidewalk. That's reasonable. But I mean, if I build the sidewalk now and you guys decide to go further, how do I even know where to put it?
In my 25 years here, we've never been successful in having somebody escrow the money to use it later like that. It just doesn't work out. So we've, and Randy can attest, I don't think it's $8,000 worth of sidewalk. It should be a reasonable amount. But that hasn't worked out well for us in the past. It's better to just get it in and do the best we can to make sure it fits.
I support that too. It's a nice comment.
So so then do I have to replace the sidewalk if you widen the street then and
No.
tear out my existing sidewalk?
No, that's the city. If the city comes through and you've already got it, then you're done.
But it may be, there's not a lot of room. I mean, I walk this property like every day. I was out there doing landscaping today. There's not a lot of room there. If you widen the street, the sidewalk would be like 2 foot from the roadway.
We're at least 4 or 5 years away from doing that widening. There's no money set aside. It's not in the capital improvement plan yet. There's good discussion about it and people think it's warranted, but so are dozens of other streets that are competing for those dollars. So, the best thing for us to do is minimize the gaps that we have. And this is one way to do that. And help to connect apartments and things like that with our more densely developed areas.
What I would also say is that the segment of the road where your property starts is not the area where the widening is most needed. So I don't know for sure, but I don't see how much wider we would go on that segment versus the areas behind to the north of that, where we really need the widening for even vehicular movement. And that's where we really need that for installation of things like sidewalks and what have you. So I don't know if we've talked about going to 3 lanes, and I don't know, we might already have enough space for that where your property starts. But again, that's all in the details, and those are things we'll work out when we get there. But I guess that's kind of some of the context in terms of when we talk about widening. A lot of that is to the north of your property's location, like immediately to the north, really.
I don't know what Scott thinks about it, but you could put it perhaps in a sidewalk easement behind on your property, so it stays away from the drainage and avoids the trees. Just
Oh yeah, that'd be possible. And that happens occasionally, not very often, but occasionally. Nobody really wants to have it infringe on their property anymore, but it's possible.
avoid the tree, save the ditch, we won't get tore out
Yeah.
in the future, I can guarantee you that at that point.
And quite honestly, I apologize. We have to have this discussion here. That should be worked out at site plan review, and it just hasn't been. So we will work that out at staff level.
All right.
And there's a development coming in just about 2 blocks down from here. They're required to put sidewalks in too, and they're going to be going to nowhere. So you're not the only one on that street that's got to put sidewalks in.
2 blocks down.
Yeah, 2 blocks down. Street's gonna come out. There's those new houses in the back that go along the trail. It's gonna come out to Kinney, and it's gonna be a street, and there's gonna be sidewalks on the 2 end lots. So those will probably dictate where those sidewalks are gonna end up going north and south.
I mean, this is off the subject, whatever. How do you get the residences to sidewalks? I mean,
We do it in the right of way, right?
If you're directing it to me, I would say that getting the single family homes to build sidewalk retroactively is the most difficult task we have. So it doesn't happen very often. That's why we make sure that with commercial, industrial, office, all those uses, that we get it done any chance we can to minimize the cost on the general public for these types of projects. So it's tough to do.
Yeah, that's my only point, is that if you're never gonna be able to get the residences to build a sidewalk, then it seems silly. I mean, yeah, I love sidewalks. If it was connecting sidewalk, I'd be the first one to raise my hand. Be like, that's a great idea, but I don't understand it. And
All right, thank you very,
Back and sit down with staff to work that out, and if for some reason it's like, you know what, this isn't gonna work, you can always come back and we can change our mind.
I mean,
They bring it back
since
to
you
it.
guys went to the site and saw the amount of drainage, I mean, it's like 3-4 feet down from my yard. And my sidewalk would go into a beautiful tree. And you could go around the tree, but then there's a 3-foot drop to a huge piece of drainage that goes all the way to the school, you know, past all those places. And I just don't, I mean, no one's been to the site, no one's come out to it to look at it.
Well,
Like, yes, I love sidewalks. I think they're great, but I mean.
I'm gonna call you out a little bit on that, because contours don't show that deep of a ditch, so.
okay,
I mean, there's a huge ditch there.
all right. At this point, the action on this is complete and appreciate your time this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is case number 21-014. This is a public hearing. It's a final area site plan review, 3174 4 Mile Road. Tricia, as planning director, if you could introduce this project, please.
So we have Great Lakes Capital with us again for their final area site plan review at 3174 4 Mile Road. So overview of the request and the property. Tonight, the action requested by the Planning Commission is to review the proposed FASP for phase 1 of the Great Lakes Industrial IPUD, consisting of a 216,000 square foot industrial building and related improvements, and to provide an approval with or without conditions, denial, or tabling of the request. So again, this is an FASP review. The property address is 3174 4 Mile Road. Hold on. Just realized I'm not sharing the right screen. Okay, let's try that again. Gotta love technology. Okay, so lot size here is 16.15 acres. The zoning now is IPUD. Future land use designation is business. It's in the northwest neighborhood and has a community character designation of enterprise. And the general location of the site is situated at the southeast corner of the Hendershot Avenue 4 Mile Road intersection, the southeast corner. And we have Andrew Rossell of AR Engineering with us remotely tonight, who's representing the property owner, Arnold and Viola Grover, and the property owners, I'm sorry, and the prospective buyer, Jeff Smoke of Great Lakes Capital. So just a refresher here of the location of this parcel. This is the Hendershot extension that I've just drawn in here, where this parcel will have access off of. Again, the zoning is now IPUD, and we have Alpine Township to the north. This is the Amazon site, and we have additional industrial zone properties here, and we have agricultural zoning here. So just a refresher on the timeline of this project. The original submittal for the rezone and PASP for this application was in January of this year. And in March, on March 3rd, this was when the Planning Commission first considered the rezone and the approval of the PASP. Planning Commission ended up tabling the PASP at that meeting. And then on March 17th, the Planning Commission conditionally approved the PASP. And then on 4/12, The city commission had their first reading of the rezone request, and it was officially approved by the city commission on April 26th. And it was rezoned from agricultural to IPUD. So we have the FASP now that you're reviewing. And the improvements that are being proposed here include a 216,000 square foot industrial spec building. They are also proposing 190 parking spaces, several truck docks, sidewalks, stormwater management facilities, and they also have some space reserved for a 51,000 square foot expansion. And they're also proposing some landscaping and screening. So just a few highlights from my report. The exterior building elevations. So I should back up. They have addressed almost all of the items, all of the big ticket items that we have brought up to them. And we just have a few more loose ends that need to be tied up with this plan. One of them being the exterior building elevations. The plan that was submitted shows the entrance on the east elevation. And a while back, when we asked them to revise the plan to shift that entrance to the north side so that it was facing 4 Mile. These elevation drawings don't reflect that. So we just asked that they revise that to be consistent with what's on the plan. And then we would also like to have them give us some facade materials so that we can ensure that the materials meet our ordinance requirement. And so one of the other bigger items that we had a lot of discussion about at the Planning Commission meeting when the PASP was being considered was the landscaping plan. So we had asked the applicant to provide us with a landscape profile that shows a two-dimensional view of this. This is the single family home that's situated to the east of the proposed building. Proposed building is sitting at 807 feet above sea level, and the neighbor's house is 801. And so they provided us with these lines of sight and how in reference it is to being able to see the building with a small berm there and with some landscaping and evergreens to further buffer. And they're also proposing a 6-foot high screening fence. They described having some issues with building a berm that was any higher than 2 feet. And so we kind of met them in the middle in terms of that berm, and 2 feet, in my opinion, is better than no feet. So we are okay with the landscape plan that has been proposed. A few items here. So sheet C 2.0 just has some minor text revisions to the general notes. So one of them is that the building dimensions and floor areas need to be broken out by office and industrial uses. So that has to be shown on this sheet. Note number 2 indicates rezone to IPUD. Pretty sure that was probably just a carryover from the previous plan. So that just needs to be changed to reflect that it is in fact zoned IPUD now. There's also a note under proposed land use that indicates that the total square footage of the building, all phases combined, will be 271,625 square feet. Whereas note number 5 under building indicates a total square footage of 265, 625. So it's just a discrepancy that needs to get cleared up. We need to know which one is the accurate square footage of the total build out. And then it should also say that under building, it should note that it's talking about phase 1 being proposed at 216,000 square feet. And note number 7 doesn't need to reference compliance with the landscape ordinance since it's a PUD and we've worked out our own requirements for the landscaping. All it needs to reference is C sheet L 1.0 for detail. So my recommendation is that the planning commission grant final area site plan approval for phase 1 of the Great Lakes Capital IPUD consisting of a 216,000 square foot industrial spec building located at 3174 4 Mile Road Northwest per the plan set with a last revision date of 5/3, subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall revise the landscaping plan to include the items noted in my staff report for review and approval by CDD staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. One of those items was asking for some street trees within the 4 mile right of way. And the applicant reached out to the road commission to see if that would be okay. And according to Tom, it sounds like they've got a few species that they'd rather not see there. But other than that, they've got some distances from the intersection. But it was recommended by the assistant city manager that they plant some trees in the right of way there if permitted by the Kent County Road Commission. The applicant shall revise the exterior building elevations to reflect the correct features per the plan with entrance, glass windows, etc., and to include the facade materials consistent with 94-357 of the zoning ordinance to be reviewed and approved by CDD staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicant shall submit a lighting fixture specification and location plan, as well as a photometric plan for the entire site to be reviewed and approved by CDD staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. We haven't received any lighting plans at all for this. So that's, if the planning commission is comfortable with this condition with staff reviewing and approving the lighting, that's the route that we'd like to take. The applicant shall revise the items on sheet C 2.0 as noted in my staff report and submit prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicant shall address all the items noted in the city engineer's report dated 5/12/21. And the applicant shall make the above noted revisions to the FASP plan set with an updated last revision date and submit 3 hard copies and 1 PDF of the revised plan set to CDD staff prior to the issuance of a building permit.
All right, thank you, Tricia. Commissioners, any comments or questions for Tricia? Okay, thank you. We'll move to city engineer Scott Connors.
Apologize for sounding nasally. This mask is really keeping the pollen in here. We have gone through site plan review a number of times on this site, so we're kind of narrowing it down at this point. Sheet C2 calls for a 10-foot public utility easement. We need that to be changed to a private utility easement. And then most importantly, we need to have that recorded and copies to the CDD before building permits are issued. We've had a little bit of trouble with this lately, and some of them have gotten away from us to the point where they can't be issued later. And we just need to really hammer that to make sure that that's taken care of. From a stormwater protection perspective, they're in what's called Zone A, which is our most restrictive stormwater zone. And so there's a super low release rate that's needed for the 0 to 2 year storm. They don't have that shown on their calculations. I don't think it's going to be a huge difference. It actually will help with their outflow to the public storm sewer. So there should be an easy change, but they'll have to make that change. We also ask that the layout for parking in phase 3 be shown on the plan. It's our understanding that that could be approved administratively in the future. And with that, we want to make sure it's laid out properly so that we don't have an argument later. And that includes showing a couple of catch basins so that the drainage is properly conveyed from that area safely down to the bottom of the detention pond. And there's a retaining wall that's shown on sheet C4. It says it's going to be constructed in phase 2, but as we look at the issues there that they've got with grading for the storm sewer and the sanitary sewer, or is it water main? Water main. It appears that that's going to be needed now, and so we'd want to make sure that that was shown in phase 1, and that most importantly, it's built on their own property because it looks like it's over the line. And if it's over the line, then it's going to require a permanent easement. If it's on the line, it's going to require a temporary grading easement or permit to allow them to kind of work on both sides. But in either case, we don't want to be too presumptive here and just giving them the authority to build something on somebody else's property. So that'll have to be taken care of. Also, that the extra fill that's going to go in over the water main at the southeast part of the site is going to impound some water in that phase 2 area. So if you look at the grading plan, it appears that there's a hole that'll be left behind. And I think that's because when we sent them some check prints back, we said this, some of these pipes are kind of coming out of the ground here. You're gonna need some extra fill. So 2 solutions, they could fill that entire area in like they would need to do for phase 2, or they could put a stormwater outlet in that area, but we don't want to see it turn into an unofficial pond where it's going to be stagnant or something like that and not have an outlet. So that'll have to be resolved. And then lastly, the landscaping along Hendershot. It's kind of hard to tell. It looks like it might be in that private utility easement, but if they could move that a couple feet further east, it'll save a whole lot of grief when some fiber company comes through later. We don't want all those trees to get damaged. We want them to be just outside of that area so that they can last a good long time. And that's it.
Thanks, Scott. Any comments or questions for Scott? All right. We've got the applicant online. I believe Mr. Rossell and Mr. Smoke are available. Would either one of you like to offer comments on this project? You must be muted.
Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. I was on my phone audio, so I'm not sure how to unmute myself on that. I tried to hit *6, so I apologize. Good evening. My name is Andrew Rossell with AR Engineering, representing Great Lakes Capital, who is the prospective buyer on this property. Jeff Smoke is also on the line. He's the owner. Thank you all for your time tonight and hearing us. And I think Trisha's gone through, did a nice job going through the last remaining issues that we have, as well as Scott. One thing that wasn't pointed out is that we resubmitted plans earlier today addressing these items other than the lighting plan, which we hope to have in the next couple of days. So that will be forthcoming, and we intend to comply with the lighting ordinance of the city on that. Just touching base on a few of those items, we have, like I said, addressed all of those, the minor corrections in the site data table on sheet C2 and updating the landscaping. We did talk with the road commission, and they will allow the street trees in the right of way. However, with the close proximity of the right of way to the edge of 4 Mile and also the sidewalk that we're installing, we're hoping to install those trees on the back side of that sidewalk, just off from that sidewalk to the south. There's also a 50-foot consumer's easement there. So we're right at the edge of that. Other than that, I think we've addressed all the other comments based upon the PASP revisions. And I think that we're in a pretty good place, given this submittal. I know that Tricia or Scott didn't have time today to review these revisions. However, we did make those specifically relating to the breakout on the site layout and clarifying the square footage in the office area, delineating that, making the other couple minor comments, and then shifting over to the landscape plan. We did provide, we were able to grade up and then back down and still keep reasonable mowable slopes on that east side, and be able to maintain a 2-foot berm there. Not so much up at the northwest corner where the grade really starts to drop, but back just a little ways to where it starts to match the grade where the water tower drive climbs up. We did provide, I think it's 11 street trees along the 4-mile frontage, and then we did pull those street trees or landscaping along Hendershot back a few more feet. They were off the line, but just to make sure, like Scott said, just to make sure we don't have any problems, we pulled those back into the site a little bit. Speaking to some of the comments from the engineer side, we did update our grading plan to, we were going back and forth on that kind of that pocket of drainage back there. We could lower that rim of catch basin 8 a couple feet to accept that water, but we sheet drain that off, just raise the grade a little bit back up closer to the building so that that's able to sheet drain. That catch basin on the corner there in the southeast corner, that's 20 feet off, and we're only 5 feet above the existing grade. So I think they're actually going to be right on grade when they construct that storm sewer. So we won't need a retaining wall. And that retaining wall is offset from the property line for phase 2. Really where that's needed is if we do construct it in phase 2, the parking and building as shown. Obviously, this is just conceptual at this point, but if we were to build that, depending on the layout, that's when the retaining wall would be needed. Other than that, I think regarding the stormwater, I guess we disagree with Scott's interpretation of the zone that we're in. We're right on the edge. Hendershot is actually the zone boundary. So according to the stormwater zone map, we're in zone B, and Hendershot would be the divider. So we can work with Scott on that, but we are confident that we're in zone B, negating that requirement for the 0 to 2 inch release. Other than that, I would be happy to answer any questions. Like I said, we feel we've addressed all these and would be happy to work with staff and comply with anything, that they might come up with or find deficient in our resubmittal.
Thank you, Mr. Rossell. Any comments, questions for the applicant? Okay, this is a public hearing. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion by Tyler, supported by Scott to open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would be opposed to opening a public hearing? Let me know. Indicate such. Okay, we'll go forward and the public hearing is open. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to offer comment? Anybody online? Same way? Okay, no public comment.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Support.
Motion by Tyler, supported by Pat to close the public hearing. Again, anyone have any opposition to that? Please voice it. There being none, public hearing is closed. We have recommendations from staff with regard to this. It sounded generally like the applicant was in agreement with all the conditions, although I wasn't clear with regard to the having the retaining wall constructed in phase one. That's recommended by the city engineer, and I wasn't sure, Mr. Rossell, whether you were in agreement or with that or not.
We are not in agreement with that for the reasons I disclosed. The storm sewer that is crossing approximately 21 feet off from the property line, we feel that's sufficient to be able to slope back down to the existing grade. If need be, we could lower those grades along that pipe run by a couple feet. And if in the future they were ever to construct that parking lot along that south line, at that time they could raise those structures by 2 feet. But we'd be happy to work with Scott on that to make sure he's comfortable with it.
Scott, would you be, put you on the spot here, comfortable working with them to work through that issue?
Yeah, like Andrew said, he submitted new plans today that we haven't reviewed, so we're in kind of a quandary. I hate to do that to you, but so we haven't reviewed any of his changes.
Okay.
You kind of have to put faith
Well-
in our reports and just say, work it out, I guess.
I will make a comment that he needs to make Scott comfortable, and you need to provide the proper documentation, cross sections or whatever. And I'm also gonna add, if Scott says you're in zone A, you're in zone A.
Well, I've been wrong before. Just ask my kids. So
Well,
We'll double check that.
you need to admit that he's in B. He doesn't tell you he's in B. If you determine that it's A unless you.
With all due respect, I respectfully disagreed with him based on the map. I wasn't telling him he was wrong.
But you didn't come across very nice.
I would just, Mr. Chair, I would just point that if Mr. Rosella and Scott can't come to a point of agreement, that it has to come back here. So it would be a change to the final area site plan. It would have to be approved by us. So.
Okay. All right. Any other comments, questions?
I do agree that putting the trees behind the sidewalk is a great idea. I'm the guy at the road commission that the person talked to yesterday.
All right, very good. Do we have a motion on this project?
Yeah, I can go ahead and make a motion for case 21-014 to approve the final area site plan for a 216,000 square foot spec building for Great Lakes Capital proposed for 3174 4 Mile Road Northwest per the plan set last revision dated 5/3/2021, subject to the following conditions and based on the findings below. The applicant shall revise the landscaping plan sheet L 1.0 to include the items noted in the planning director's report dated 5/10/2021 for review and approval by CDD staff prior to issuance of building permit. The applicant shall revise the exterior building elevations to reflect the correct features per the plan, entrance, glass windows, etc., and to include facade materials consistent with section 94-357 of the zoning ordinance to be reviewed and approved by CDD staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicant shall submit a lighting fixture specification and location plan, as well as a photometric plan for the entire site to be reviewed and approved by CDD staff prior to issuance of a building permit. The applicant shall revise the items on sheet C 2.0 as noted in the planning director's report dated 5/10/2021 and submit prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicant shall address all the items outlined in the city engineer's report dated 5/12/2021 to the satisfaction of the city engineer. The applicant shall make the above noted revisions to the final area site plan set with an updated last revision date and submit 3 hard copies and 1 PDF of the revised plan set to CDD staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. Findings, the proposed development does conform to the city's general development plan or any part thereof. The proposed development does conform to the intent and to all regulations and standards of this article and of this chapter as applicable. The proposed development will be adequately served by public facilities and services such as highways, streets, police and fire protection, drainage courses, water and sanitary sewer facilities, refuse disposal, or that the persons or agencies responsible for the proposed development shall be able to provide in a manner acceptable to the planning commission any such facilities and services. The location of the proposed uses, layout of the site, and its relation to its streets giving access to it is such that traffic to, from, and within the site and assembly of persons in connection therewith will not be hazardous or inconvenient to the project or the surrounding area. And noise, odor, light, or other external effect from any source whatsoever which is connected with the proposed use will not adversely affect adjacent and neighboring lands or uses.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Gilbert,
I'll support that.
supported by Tyler. Any questions? Tricia, if you could please call roll, please.
Terry,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Tyler,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Joel,
Yes.
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jason.
yes,
All right, motion carried, project approved with those conditions.
Thank you all.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We'll be in touch, Andrew.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right. It looks like we're at the end of the agenda. Any staff comments?
We'll be having a meeting on June 2nd with some couple of site plan reviews. One is for outdoor seating area at Stan's Tacos, formerly known as Stan Diego. And we also have a car wash being proposed on the same site that the O'Reilly's Auto Parts Store was proposed, over at 438 Wilson.
Just as much concrete.
And yeah, it's kind of slowing down just a little bit, which allows us to kind of take a breath. But then we've got some like bigger projects that are still looming over us, like the English Hills FASP. I'm not really sure exactly what's happening with the Waterford Village project. Steve could probably go into a little bit more detail about the ad hoc committee that was formed to address some of the plan. But yeah, so I don't know if you want to.
The mayor put together an ad hoc committee from amongst the commission to, I guess, review the issues with the plan from the city commission's perspective to, I guess, make sure that there's clarity and that they can, I guess, hopefully get the project approved. I think the ad hoc committee was formed as a way to table the project. So it would not need to come back here for rezoning purposes, but would instead then have the second, have a re-review at the city commission level. That is my understanding of the procedural steps. So I guess that's where it seems to be at this point. But the developer was out of town for the week or so. So I think when he gets back, that's when the work will begin on that.
There's a couple of exciting things, I guess, going on with the DDA. We had our kickoff meeting today that covered the streetscapes project. So I think there's a lot of ground to cover there, and But when it's all said and done, implemented, should be nice with new street lights and landscaping and other features.
All right, thank you. Any other comments?
I'll just say that the church across the street looks very nice and the planning commission did a great job on that.
Very good.
It looks different with that big
Yeah,
sail.
I was wondering if that was outside the height restrictions.
You want to file a complaint? with the
I
owner?
just was wondering when I drove by it.
I won't be here for the next meeting. Travis will be. So if you have questions in advance that you want to get into some detail on, get a hold of me.
Okay. All right,
Oh, and welcome back, Jason.
Thank you.
all right.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.